Hey, welcome to Sound of Truth. It's episode number 6. On today's show, we're going to talk about Exodus chapters 1 through 10, and we're also going to interview my cousin, Shawn Maragni, who is a missionary to the Philippines. That and a little bit more coming right up. Okay, so we have a PlayStation 2.
Good.
That was handed down to us
Wow.
graciously from our neighbor several years ago when he moved up, I guess, to PlayStation 3 or whatever he got.
Yeah, so you
he's
got
like,
the
"Hey,
hand-me-down
I was gonna throw this
PlayStation
away,"
2.
but- Yeah, and he gave us a few games with it, and we have played with that through the years off and on. Put it in the garage in a box, pull it out every once in a while, usually on special occasions. You know, when we've got like a holiday and we're sitting around at the house. What are we going to do? Let's play. So we pull out the PlayStation 2. We played those games as a family. But you only got 2 controllers.
It makes me sad to think that you guys are like, what are we going to do? And the kids are just like, can we please have the PlayStation 2, sir? The PlayStation 2.
It is really old.
Yes, it is. The
We've got,
PlayStation
like,
2.
NBA 06 and
I was going to say,
NFL 05.
I had the PlayStation 2 when I was like in middle school, it felt like. It was like
probably
super
was.
long.
But the thing of it is, you know, we talked about Tom Brady last week. I was just thinking, Tom Brady might be the only person that's on that NFL game that's still playing
That
today.
they could be like, I've played as him before.
Right.
That's funny.
But so we've decided it's time to upgrade.
Wow.
So I'm researching, and boy, these things have come a long way since PlayStation 2.
Oh, yeah.
Long way. And I didn't realize it. I assumed it was just PlayStation versus Xbox, but actually it's PlayStation versus Xbox versus Nintendo Switch.
Yes, the Nintendo has thrown their hat into the ring, although it's been in there since forever.
Switch, from what I understand, is kind of the next generation past Wii, WII or whatever.
Well, it's
that was.
the next generation of the next generation past the Wii. I believe, and you gamers at home can correct me. I think it was the Nintendo Wii, then the Wii U, and then the Nintendo Switch.
I completely
You missed the U.
Wii U. I didn't even know. This is the first time I think I've ever heard about it, unless
you go.
subconsciously it's somewhere
Yeah, see,
back there. But
this is going to be reverse of the Super Bowl conversation that we had, where you
You're
had
right.
all the you had all the deets.
You're gonna
You had all the
educate me
details.
on
Correct,
this.
correct. So I would, being
what should I get?
well, this is where it's going to get really nerdy, because now I have to ask, like, what are you trying to do? Whenever I try to go computer shopping, because I know nothing about computers, I'll be like, hey, I'm looking for a good laptop, and the person's always going to ask you what? Well, what do you want to do with it? I don't know, just search the internet and like watch videos and stuff.
That's true.
I'm like, oh, if all you're going to do is that, but if you're going to do editing or lots of video games, and you're going to want to go over here, you have to ask these questions. You've got a family of like, what, 23?
Feels like it sometimes. So we have 4 teenagers.
Right, 4 teenagers, all of them are going to want to play.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to want something that's going to let you have, we talked about this a little bit before, couch co-op, which means you guys are all going to play together in the same room, which
So that means one of these does that and the other 2 doesn't.
one of those does that a little bit better than the others. Now, I've got a PS4,
Mm-hmm.
4 controllers. Now, a lot of their best games on there are always going to be these one-player only. So if we went with all these one-player only, my 4 kids, oh my goodness, one's a baby. My kids would just sit there and watch Daddy play, or
Right.
we'd have to sit there and watch Titus play or Phoebe.
Which is what we've done some with the PS2. Some of those games we'll take turns playing and
Right.
watching each other. But
Yeah,
it's
but that's-
better if we're playing together.
Yeah, let's get more efficient with our use here, more wise.
So Nintendo Switch is what my son said we need to get for what you're describing. We
It's
all
got
want to play together.
A lot of family-friendly couch co-op sort of games, a lot of them. Now, the PS4 has those, and a lot of the games I have on there are these couch co-op where all 4 of us can play together. But you can't
go beyond 4
for the most part
with
correct.
the PS4.
Yeah, it would be a little difficult to do that with the Switch. Actually, I don't know if you can go beyond 4. Now, forgive me for all the people.
Well, I think they said you could play like
so long as you have extra controllers, you can all just
extra
kind of jump
controllers,
in.
right?
Well, then your kids would know better than I am, because they're probably looking.
From what I
into it.
understand. Now, to me, I haven't really handled a Nintendo Switch controller, but I'm assuming the PS4 or 5 or whatever's out now is similar to the PS2. I like that.
Yeah,
I like
it's
that
your
controller.
traditional.
It is really
I have 2 hands on here.
user-friendly. Right.
I've got the
Switch thing looks like it's a tiny little thing but
It looks like the ceiling fan controller. Like, let me turn that
okay.
thing.
I guess it's just something I could get used to, though.
You'll get used to it,
Yeah.
but it is definitely weird. It's like one-handed, sort of, some buttons over here, one handed over here, some buttons over here, and you kind of figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
You'll pick it up fast, but your family, I think the Nintendo Switch is going to go.
Okay. And as
Also,
far as games,
I think the games on the Switch are probably much more family oriented. So you're not going to see you could find, blood and stuff on these games, but for the most part, you'll find games that are more like family party games.
Okay.
You'll enjoy that. I think that'd be really good.
Have you played the golf? My favorite game on the PS2 is the Tiger Woods golf.
No, I used to play.
And that's another one where it's surprising, but he just won the Masters like 2 years ago.
Yeah, so he's still in the game.
He's still competing all these years later after Tiger Woods 05 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of crazy. But
I do like playing golf games on these consoles, but it's just for the the whimsy and playing around. I never really got into like, who am I playing right now? Oh, this is Tiger Woods. I don't know who any of these players are.
Tiger Woods is the best character to choose on the.
He has all the highest stats.
Oh yeah, he hits the ball the farthest and the straightest and all that. So,
to all of our gamer folk, that would be called OP. He's OP.
What's that mean?
He's overpowered.
Oh, the ultimate overpowered video game character ever.
Who are you gonna hit me with? Who's this?
Bo Jackson.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. You talked about this.
Tecmo Bowl. I didn't talk about this.
Was this on the original Nintendo?
I think so. I think it was Nintendo back in the 80s or whatever. No one could tackle Bo Jackson. He could run around the field. I mean, it was absurd.
He'd run circles around everyone.
You could just go Google Bo Jackson video game Tecmo, Techmo Bowl. Go look that up on YouTube, a video, and watch somebody playing it. And him, it's absolutely absurd.
Everybody's like, I want to play that one.
Of course, the graphics are horrible.
Yes,
but yeah, he's the most overpowered. That's kind of going back to my generation. I had a Sega Genesis. You even know what that is?
Yeah, I've had the original Nintendo. We had the Sega Genesis. We had Super Nintendo. We had the PS4. We had the games, Nintendo 64. We had the PS2.
I got the
PS1.
Sega Genesis when I was in seminary.
Whoa!
Yeah, this is in grad school. I'm playing.
What games did you play in the Sega Genesis?
College football was NFL football was that one was my favorite. I don't remember the name of it, but that one and there was an NBA game where it's 2-on-2.
Oh, that sounds fun.
And they jump higher than the goal and dunk it, and they go, "Oh my, he's on fire!
He's on fire!" And
boom chakalaka!
Would the ball be on fire? Literally?
Oh, literally on fire! And you can shoot the threes all day long. They'd be,
he's on fire!
Yeah. And the boom chakalaka! It's crazy.
I can't believe you just said you have a Sega Genesis and you never played Sonic.
I don't have it anymore. I don't know what happened to it.
I thought Sonic was like
I think we did
the flagship Sega
I'm a
Genesis.
Sports dude.
I can see that. Yes. Well, I guess I've known.
So, what's your favorite game you guys play on yours?
On our PS4?
Yeah.
Right now, the favorite game that I have been playing, I haven't played in a while, but the game that I always think about when I want to go play is a game called Stardew Valley. This is going to be really nerdy, but all you do in that game is farm. It's a farming simulator, and I just go to my farm and I harvest all my stuff.
Not what I expected.
Yep.
Farmer Rick.
Not
Ranger Rick.
No.
Farmer Rick.
You see this beard? This is my farming beard.
So this is
Stardew Valley is
you're not hunter wannabe. You're not outdoorsman. You're farmer wannabe.
Boy, howdy. That's right.
When we had Rodney on the show, we should have brought this out.
The Stardew Valley part is like, oh, the tractor, yeah.
Yeah. He probably doesn't know that about that game, but
no, and it's So that's my game right now.
Is
Stardew Valley.
Do you go around and get on a tractor and actually go up and down?
No, it is.
This sounds like Lemonade Stand from Apple back in the early 80s or something.
I don't even know about that, but all it is you inherit a farm from your grandpa, and it is completely up to you. You go move to this very small town, and your job, if you want, is to develop your farm, and make friends with the people in the neighborhood. That's it. That is the game. And I know that sounds weird.
I cannot imagine what this even looks like on a video game.
Someday I'll have to show you, but I'll say this. I did try to get Daisy into it, and I was like, one day I told her, you're playing this game. Right. So she played it for like an hour, and now she's hooked.
No way.
Don't tell anyone. She's hooked.
Does it come in a Nintendo Switch?
It does. It actually does. Oh,
is this like the game version?
It just came out on the Nintendo Switch.
Remember on Facebook, Farmerville or whatever it was?
I never played Farmville.
Okay.
Yeah, I never played.
Kind of the equivalent?
I don't know. I've never played it.
And what's the Bejeweled or Bejeweled, or there was some.
Yeah.
I never see that anymore.
It's like a puzzle game where you.
I have no clue. I didn't get into those game stuff on.
Yeah, I never. I
don't see people talking about it anymore, though.
Yes, everybody was always hooked on it and like, oh, send me some heart. I never played it, so I don't know how it really worked, but I know people were really hooked into the Farmville thing.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is like that or not, but I will say this is one of those things where it's just like, it's so simple, but it's also, and this is gonna be a plug for the game, Stardew Valley, for those listening at home. Very simple. It's not about going around killing everybody and whatever, but it's a very simple, peaceful game where if you can just kind of it's literally like people play it just to
unwind.
Relax. Yeah, it will let you relax and unwind.
It's your chilling out. It's just sit and veg and
enjoy. Pretty soon, we talked about this. Pretty soon, there's going to be couch co-op. Right now, it's just one player.
Oh.
Right now, it's just if you have a console, it's just one player. But pretty soon, I think the next few weeks, they're going to update it so you can sit down next to your lovely wife or children. And all of you guys can work on that farm.
Virtual farming. Interesting.
Now, there's also fishing, and there's also like caves that you can go beat up some monsters if you wanted to. But most of the game is the farming.
Okay. Cool. Very good. All right, let's go to a break. Plug. Let's go to a break and come back and talk about Exodus chapters 1 through 10.
Come on!
Okay, so we are now at Exodus. We finished Genesis. Now we go to Exodus. After we finish Exodus, we'll go to the New Testament for the book of Matthew.
Yep.
But Exodus chapters 1 through 10 was our assignment for this week. And in a couple of days here at Harvest Jacksonville's facility, I will be preaching a message from Exodus 1 through 10. But let's talk about this section of Scripture. This reminds me of Genesis 1 through 11, in that there is so much ground covered.
Oh, yeah.
In it. I mean, so
400 years?
much.
More than 400 years?
Well, no, not ground covered from Exodus 1 through 10 is not 400 years. It's Moses to birth to till he's 80 years old. So 80 years is covered. But 400 years are in the white between Genesis 50 and Exodus 1. That's 400 years gap. But once you start Exodus 1,
there's even more?
The chapters cover 80 years, right?
I don't know. Chapter 1 of verse 8 says, now there arose a new king in Egypt. And that's when they were going under slavery.
Right, which is in...
so that would have been at least within the 400 years. So it's covered somewhat in this chapter.
I guess so.
But yeah, so, I mean, what give or take, from the end of Genesis to what we're picking up here, there's 480, 550, 500 years?
I think the new king coming up here is the one under Moses.
Oh.
And he has no knowledge of Joseph.
Okay,
now.
You know what? Maybe that's the case.
That's what I'm saying.
I always picked
400-year gap, and then Exodus 1 picks up in Moses' birth.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I always pictured it was kings in that 40-year gap, and then it was just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, no, I think this king, there's probably been in that 400 years an increased separation between the Hebrew people and the Egyptians with their differences in the way they viewed life and all that. Mm-hmm. Under Joseph, there was a good relationship between the Hebrew people and the Pharaoh at the time, but now there's 400 years later.
Yeah, there's less than 100 of them. Now there's a nation.
And
there's been zero assimilation.
They have been faithful to obey the mandate in Genesis to be fruitful and multiply.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have, by the time Moses is 80 years old, approximately 2 million Hebrews living in Egypt instead of the original family of 70. In 400 years, they multiplied that much. So,
can you imagine a graph?
Yeah, really.
70, and then what 400 years later, 500 years later, you're up to 2 million?
I think it was back in the 70s or 80s, there kind of became this popular thing with the earth shrinking, with the global population growing. Just replace yourself. 2 parents have 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, China did even more than that. They went to the one-child-only policy. But they grew tremendously here, and now they have a king, a Pharaoh, who doesn't remember Joseph, doesn't know about him at all, and he's going to start persecuting, enslaving God's people, the Hebrews.
Yeah, out of fear.
Mm-hmm. Even to the point of having their male children killed, supposedly supposed to have them killed when they're being born, but the Hebrew midwives, according to chapter 1, weren't really doing that very well.
Right.
So then they're going to throw them in the Nile.
Scary stuff. Talk about China and the one-child policy. This kind of takes that to the extreme. No boy policy.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary. But in the midst of that, we have Moses, chapter 2.
One family says we're gonna make sure our little boy's not killed, our baby boy.
Right.
They
I'm going to trust the Lord with
trust
this.
the Lord, put him in a little ark, if you will.
That's a good point. Yes, put him in the little ark.
Put him in the water. One of Pharaoh's household finds him, brings him in, falls in love with this baby, and
calls him a beautiful baby, right?
Yeah, raises him.
Beautiful.
Moses, drawn out of the water, name out of the water.
Yeah.
Moses raises him in Pharaoh's household, and even goes, and just so happens, under God's sovereignty, God's care,
unbelievable.
his birth mother, his mom, is the one who provides the care for him.
Yes, that is the only God would have figured out, like, I'm going to solve every problem here. So great. I loved it. I didn't know this. His name means out of water.
I drew him out of the water. Moses.
That makes the parting of the sea that much more powerful to me.
Yeah, good point.
I've never thought, I didn't know his name meant that, but wow.
Mm-hmm.
God's like, out of the water is your name, huh? No water's going to touch you.
So he
good stuff.
Grows to be 40 years old, and then he commits murder. He knows he's Hebrew because he sees this these two Hebrews fighting.
So he's grown up seeing his people. Get this. He's grown up seeing his people
being mistreated,
enslaved and mistreated, and this one just kind of puts it over the edge. And he's like, I'm gonna get justice for my people with this guy.
For one of them.
Yeah, one person.
And I think it might have been in Hebrews where it says he thought when he did that they would realize that God had raised him up to be the deliverer, but they didn't recognize that.
Instead, he had to run, right?
Yeah, he fled to Midian, out in the countryside. But at the end of the chapter 2, the Pharaoh dies, but the Israelites are groaning. Verse 23, the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning and remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob, patriarchs from Genesis, minus Joseph, as we talked about. This is how he identifies himself. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. God heard their cries. I preached a message many, many years ago, probably 25 years ago, on this final paragraph of Exodus 2 about how God hears our cries. He cares about his people. He hears our cry. And here's the beautiful part about this. All of the preceding material in chapter 2 was about God preparing this deliverer. So before we even cry out to God, God's already been working on the answer for us, which is beautiful to think about. They're crying out to God. They reach a point in their misery that, and isn't that something? It doesn't say they cried out to God earlier when they were just going into their slavery. It's after they've been in their slavery for at least, Moses here is 40 years old, at least 40 years, that then they finally reach a point of their crying out to God. And isn't that aren't we so like that? We'll dwell in our misery a little bit before
or we try to fix it ourselves.
Exactly.
We're trying to we got to get ourselves out of this. And then you finally come to the point like, I can't.
Nowhere else to look but, the proverbial saying, but up.
Yep.
Finally hit rock bottom or whatever. And we look up. So they cry out to God. He cares. He hears. And he's already been preparing an answer for them in the person of Moses. So Moses out, that's chapters 1 and 2. Get chapter 3. Moses is out in the wilderness tending his flock of Jethro's father-in-law. He finds a wife out there. He adopts a whole new life and lifestyle. Spends 40 years.
Yeah. He has to run because he's wanted for murder. And he makes a new life for him.
A new life.
Out in Midian.
The life in Pharaoh's household in the city is over.
Right.
Now he's a country boy. He's on the farm doing real farming, not virtual farming through a video game. And he's 80 years old now. And Moses' life can be his life story, his biography. It's kind of autobiographical because he wrote this as well.
Right.
Exodus. It's in 3 parts, 40 years, 40 years, 40 years. He dies at 120 years old. First 40 years in Pharaoh's household, in wealth and prosperity, great upbringing, all the finest of everything. Next 40 years, he flees. He's a country farmer, and then shepherd. And then the final, shepherd's probably the proper designation instead of farmer, but it's all the same to me as a town boy, And then final 40 years is his role as leader of the nation of Israel, leading them out of Egypt to the edge of the promised land,
Mm-hmm.
back into the wandering for 2 years after they left Egypt. They're at the edge of the promised land. They don't believe this. I'm giving you a preview of Exodus, of course, the Exodus story.
Yeah,
So they wander
spoiler
in the
alert.
wilderness until that whole generation dies off. Then they got a new generation who'll believe God and his promises and go into the promised land. Moses does not get to go in the promised land. He dies right on the edge of the promised land, symbolizing the law. Moses is a representative of the law. He symbolizes the law. Even
the
Jesus
bringer-
refers
the
to the
bringer
law
of the
as
law.
Moses,
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah.
the bringer of the law. The law cannot get you into the promised land. It can only take you right up to the edge and show you that you can go into the promised land, but it cannot get you there. Joshua, the Old Testament name for Jesus, is the one who brings you into the promised land.
Wow, you are making a bunch of connections I've never made before, so this is a lot of fun.
I'm giving a preview of Exodus, of course, and this whole story, and, of course, the book of Joshua.
But I've never thought about it that way, in,
That's right.
in this representation of the law couldn't get you there, but the promise can.
That's exactly right.
That's good.
Moses represents the law. People ask, well, why did one little sin to
Oh,
us,
yeah,
and he has to die and can't go to the promised land? Well, God had something much bigger in mind. The book of Hebrews says that everything in the Old Testament is a shadow and a lesson for us about Christ.
Yeah.
The law points out the way in terms of our need. It's holy, it's good. The law is holy and good,
Mm-hmm.
but it cannot get you in.
It can show you that you can't. It can't
It
help
shows you that you need a savior.
It shows you
need
can't
a
get in there.
Joshua/Jesus to get you in.
Mhm.
So this is the story of Moses in these 3 periods of his life. Prominence, wealth, all the world has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't land him in a good spot.
No.
He goes out, he's in the countryside for 40 years where God's preparing him. He's been humbled. It takes a long time to be prepared to be used of God.
Mm-hmm.
40 years, he's 80 years old. And from 80 to 120 is when he's God's man doing God's will. So 2/3 of his life was preparation for the 1/3 where God used him mightily.
Mm-hmm.
We need to think about that when we sometimes, maybe for those of us who do different ministries or whatever, how come God's not using me? I expect he's just going to blow it and just start doing all these great things. Well, he prepares the man before the man does the work.
Right.
And there's a lot of preparation here. So back to chapter 3. This is his moment.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say chapter 3 is probably, of the 10 chapters, chapter 3 really hit me the most. It was probably a combination of 3 and 4 where it hits me the most, where
The burning bush and the call.
the call, because Moses' response, is it Moses's or just Moses? Moses' response, or Moses's.
However you want to say it.
it.
Plural. Not plural, but
Possessive?
possessive. Yeah.
The response of Moses is so real, where there's full of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
When God says, this is what you're going to do, and he goes, I can't speak. I'm not a very good talker. And what God's response was, I made the mouth. I made the tongue. I think maybe depending on the different books you have or translations. I think mine originally said mouth. I was reading in the NLT. I think in New King James, it might say I've created the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Moses is like, I can't talk. I'm not a good speaker. He's like, I made the mouth. I made the tongue. I can make this happen. And Moses continues kind of giving him like, I can't do this, God. I can't do this. And I think
God gets mad.
Yeah, it said God got angry.
His anger burned against him.
But what did God do in his anger? Fine, I'm going to give you Aaron.
Yeah.
Your brother is on his way. Even in his anger, God was, almost condescending. You've used this word before. Condescending to meet Moses where he was at, to say, listen, I've called you for this. I know you can do this, but because I know where you're at, I'm still sending you a helper.
Right.
I'm going to send Aaron, and he'll help you out.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're not even going to need Aaron, because I feel like later on he doesn't need Aaron to speak for him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is so, I think, like us, where there's a lot of doubt, where God knows. I have actually been, like you said, I have been making you for this moment. I've been creating you. I've been moving you to this moment. And now that it's come, I know you're ready, but you don't think you are. And now you're arguing with me over whether or not you can do it. Listen, you can do it.
Right. In my power. Now, what's fascinating is,
in his power, of course.
Rewind 40 years, and Moses, when he killed the Egyptian who was mistreating the Hebrew, he thought he was trying to do it in his own strength.
Oh, yeah.
I can do this. I was raised in this household. It's obvious this is so that I would be the deliverer. I can do this. Instead, he fled because he had to learn the lesson that he can't do it in his own strength and in his own wisdom. It has to be God's way and God's strength.
Yeah, imagine Moses thinking he's doing all the right things. He's going to save his people. And what is the first thing that happens the next day after he made his move? Killed the oppressor.
Mm-hmm.
The same people he was trying to save turn on him. And they're like, what are you going to do? You going to kill us like you killed that man?
Right.
And Moses is like, I got to get out of here. You guys are going to rat me out. I got to go.
Yeah. So now he's prepared to be God's man. And it's fascinating. He was a shepherd. Isn't that cool?
Oh, yeah.
For 40 years, he's a shepherd in part of his preparation for shepherding God's people.
Mm-hmm.
So Exodus 3, this burning bush experience, God speaks to him. You're on holy ground. Take off your sandals. As you mentioned, he goes before the Lord, and God calls him to go before Pharaoh. And he says, who am I to do this, as you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And here's another great thing in this. God reveals his name.
Yeah.
And it's the verb to be.
And
Every time you learn a language, you start with the verb to be.
Yes.
I am, you are, he is, they are, etc. First person, second person, third. That's who God says he is. I am. I am. In the Hebrew language, you can. When I took Hebrew in seminary, we actually translated this. We had to translate this section. And what we learned was, when you translate this, you have freedom as a translator. You can choose. The tenses are different than the way we do it with English, but you can actually translate. A legitimate translation of "I am who I am" is "I am who I was," "I am who I am," or "I am who I will be."
Or vice versa. I was who I am. I will be who I am, right?
Yep.
Because both of those are the same
Or
word.
you could say I am who I was, who I was. I am who I am. I will be who I will be. Yeah,
I
all
was
that
who I
is
will be. I
possible
will be who I was.
Combinations.
Yeah.
And accurate translation.
And I will say,
So it just comes across, the best way to translate is just
I am.
I
Who
am.
I am. Yeah. And I'll when I first read this, and even today, I still have a hard time trying to understand that as a name.
right.
Just
Well,
like,
that's
what does
the
that
point.
even mean? Right. It was I am.
Yeah, I am the one who is.
Mm-hmm.
Which that means there's no one name that is going to encapsulate who God is. So you have to just say he is.
Yes.
He is the being. He's the, as one philosopher said, the unmoved mover. He's the origin. He's the creator. He is the fountain of life, the fountain of being. And so, of course, Jesus picks up on this and declares himself, I am.
Yes.
In John's gospel.
Yeah. So I think is it
it's
John 8 or
It's
something like that?
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, throughout multiple times, the I am, I think 7 I am statements of Jesus. I'm the living water. I'm the bread of life. I'm the good shepherd. Everything that, in every way we can use metaphors to relate who God is, Jesus embraces that to say, I am God.
Yeah.
So
I was just going to say, I know my kids still have, and it's probably good that they still have this. Every single time we mention this, they are always asking, but when did God start? Like, when was he born? You know, he didn't, he's always been. Okay.
can't comprehend that.
But when did he start? No. He didn't have a beginning. He's always been, and he'll never have an end. Like, okay,
He created
yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
that
I get
will
it. I
work
get
on
it.
you.
Yeah. But when? So they're still, and honestly, I wonder if that's the correct, like, but how, but when, but my brain, I think I just came to a place a long time ago where I'm just like, I don't question that anymore. The logic is he's never had a beginning, he's never had an end.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids are like, I've never experienced anything that has that. That doesn't make
Right.
sense to me. So that,
Of course not. It's not in our human experience.
Right.
It's the finite trying to understand the infinite.
Yeah.
So,
I am who I am. Is that Yahweh?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so here he is. He gives this, Moses has to go back to Egypt and confront Pharaoh.
Mhm.
Then you have the plagues kick in. But, before it gets better, it gets worse. That's so much part of the story as well. It's part of the God testing if we truly believe his promise.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're like, I claim the promise of God. Now everything's going to get great because I've believed. No. Now you're going to see if you really believe it. Because it's
Yeah.
going to get worse before it gets better.
But you know what's really great about it is God tells him it will be. He
Yeah.
tells him exactly what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do this. He's not going to buy it. He's not going to go for it. And I'm going to hit him with the plagues.
And then you also have in this section, this hardening of Pharaoh's heart versus him hardening his own heart. Which comes first? Kind of like the chicken and the egg.
Yep.
The whole sovereignty of God, free will of man, is right here as well. Is God hardening Pharaoh's heart because Pharaoh hardened his own heart, or is Pharaoh hardening his heart because God hardened his heart? Good luck with that answer.
Yeah.
And throughout history, Christians have disagreed with that, taking one side or the other. And I finally arrived at position. I used to take one side. Now I kind of just throw my hands up in the air and say, I'm not God. This is whole part of the mystery of God.
Mhm.
I lean toward one persuasion,
Right.
because I think Scripture tends to lean that way. But you know what? I'm okay with not knowing, and I think that's part of the faith journey as well. Is growing in recognition that I don't have to have an answer for everything.
Yeah. It's interesting, and this is not going to make sense. It's probably not going to make sense to those people who are listening, and they're way more technical.
Mm-hmm.
But the place that I always land on this is it's both. It is both.
The tension, the both and.
Pharaoh is hardening his heart. He's choosing to harden his heart. Now, perhaps you could also say that God is hardening his heart, and the only reason that Pharaoh's doing it is because God did it. But you'll never say Pharaoh didn't want to harden his heart.
Right.
It was never against his will. Pharaoh was like, I want to let them go, but I can't not. I must. He did it on his own free will.
Yeah. And he continued to not be willing to let them go. Even after he let them go, then he goes and pursues them. Of course, we're getting ahead in the text here, but
yeah, spoiler alert again.
So all these flies, all these flies, all these plagues, including flies, as I'm looking down at chapter 8, gnats, flies, frogs, livestock,
the boils,
all these 10 horrible
locusts,
things.
the darkness.
One of my favorite ones,
on the darkness one, right?
And many a preacher has preached on procrastination from Exodus chapter 8, when Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron and says, pray for God to take the frogs away from us. And Moses says, well, I'll do it whenever you want me to. When do you want me to do this? And I'd be like, now. Instead, Pharaoh says tomorrow.
Yeah. I think I must have just read over it.
One preacher did a sermon titled Another Night with the Frogs. I need one more night with the frogs. Probably what was going on is Pharaoh wanted to see if his magicians could do this in time before that. Maybe. It doesn't. I don't recall him saying that was the reason, but it's like, why would you say one more? Do this tomorrow.
Is the frogs the very first plague?
No.
Which one was the first plague? Water to blood. It was water to blood, then the frogs, right? Maybe it was Pharaoh actually testing to see
blood. Yeah,
did Moses actually have the power. Do it tomorrow. If you can do it tomorrow, then I know it's you. If you do it right now, maybe it's coincidence or something like that or whatever. I don't know.
So in chapter 11 is the final plague, the 10th, that's for the reading next week. The big one that really finally
the straw that
gets
broke
to Pharaoh's
back.
All right, great section of scripture. A lot to cover there.
Lot of stuff here.
A lot in the next 10 chapters as well.
Well, just one thing, and for those who are looking to get into deeper study, I've heard, and I've never done the study myself, but when I hear it, you're just like, that sounds like true. It has a ring of truth to it. Mm-hmm. Each one of these plagues could be connected to a different god,
false deity
that the Egyptians were worshiping, which makes these plagues that much more impactful if you're reading.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. I'm glad you brought that up. Each plague was God basically showing his superiority over a false god, right, that they worshipped.
Yeah, you worship a god of a frog.
They were
a frog.
They
god?
weren't monotheistic. Right. Okay.
Let me show you who has the true
power. You're going to be sick of frogs.
Right. You worship a god of bugs and gnats. Let me show you who has the true control of the gnats.
That's right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out.
So go check that out, guys.
Next week, Exodus 11 through 20, and in just a moment we'll have Shawn Maragni.
Come on.
All right, we're back, and we are on the phone. We're privileged to have with us my cousin, Shawn Maragni, who grew up like me in Southern Illinois, and then now he's been a missionary to the Philippines for over 2 decades. He's married to Anna, who's from the Philippines, and they've been married 22 years. They have one son, Joshua, who is 20 years old, and it's great to have him on the program. He serves in Cebu City, Philippines. Great to have you on the program, Shawn.
Oh, great to be with you all this morning.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Shawn.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So you are currently stateside, about to head back to the Philippines, and as part of what we're doing here, we want to hear, of course, we want to interview you about what you're doing and just hear your God story, and the way we want to start off with that is for you to briefly share with us how you came to faith in Jesus Christ. Would you mind sharing that with us, the short version?
Yeah, would love to. So I grew up in Southern Illinois and grew up in a Southern Baptist church. And my mom and dad, great people, great parents. And it was me and my brother. And at the age of 7, I said yes to Jesus at a revival meeting in the church. But whenever I was 13, I began to realize that my motive for saying yes was mostly about the fact that all of my friends were saying yes, and that I wasn't really saying yes because of a personal awakening in my life that I needed the Lord, but it was because of the influence of my friends. And so at the age of 13, I said yes to the Lord and surrendered my life to the Lord. And then whenever I was 22 years of age, that's where I felt like things really, really took strong roots. It's like where I had a much deeper understanding of Jesus, who he is, and my great need of him, and realizing that it wasn't just about going to church. It wasn't just about doing good things. It was really about a relationship. It was really about a surrender of my life to his lordship, to be a true follower of him. And at the age of 22 is where I made a very strong commitment in my life to really just go wholeheartedly after the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big part of my journey into Christ, and how God had done just a wonderful work in my life, and still continues on to this very day.
Yeah. So, Shawn, I remember when you really were catching on fire, I guess you could say was the phrase we used back then. He's on fire for the Lord. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was the phrase. I'm 3 years older than you, and I was in seminary at the time. Of course, you graduated from West Frankfort, our arch rival high school there in our county. Yeah. And right. What happened in between high school and that 22 years old? You served some time in the military. You served our country, right?
I sure did. I was 6 years in the military as a cook. And so whenever I graduated from high school, I immediately went into my military training. After I came back from my military training, I was very lost in my next steps. I didn't seem to have much purpose, and I spent my time quite foolishly. And as a result, I fell into a very deep depression, and I basically was really not looking at life very hopeful. I had considered suicide a number of times. I slept most of the time. Even at one point, was sleeping almost the whole day. I mean, even one time I remember sleeping near 22 hours, just not getting out of bed. And I just did this, it seems like day after day. I just didn't want to get out of bed. I just wanted to stay in bed. And my life was just wasting away. Mm-hmm. But then whenever I came to a crossroads, I decided I had to seek the Lord in my life. And something was awakening up in me, and a realization that I couldn't continue to live life the way it was, or it would really end up being the death of me. And so I sought the Lord in my life. I went out into the Shawnee National Forest here in Southern Illinois and sought the Lord for 7 days. I went out camping. It was in the middle of the winter, so the water was frozen. The weather was very cold, and 7 days by myself. And it wasn't that amazing, but I love the outdoors, and that was one thing that I really enjoyed. And so I just was asking God to give me direction. I was like, I don't know what to do. My life is just falling apart, and I don't know which way to go, where to go, and I need your guidance. And it was at that point that after that 7 days, the Lord opened up a door and made it very clear that I was to go out to Topeka, Kansas. I had a really good friend, and I was connected well with his family, and just to get a new fresh start in my life. And so I did. I moved out, and that was just an amazing door open for me that really just changed my life. It was also the door that ended up leading me into mission because of the work. I was working in a homeless shelter for about 3 years. And so I had the experience of being already in full-time ministry as my occupation. And through some of the people that I worked with, the doors began to open up for me that I was going to go into the organization that I'm a part of today, which is Youth with a Mission, also known as YWAM. And so that's a little bit of the journey that eventually led me into the door into missions where I am today.
I am a stranger in this land, but I won't be here long, so I might as well stay.
All right, we're back with Shawn Maragni, my cousin, missionary to the Philippines. And we were just talking about your journey to how you were saved and then eventually felt called by the Lord to do mission work. And I think that's where we picked up in the story. So you want to tell us again or pick back up where we left off and share with us, Shawn, how you landed in the Philippines.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was about 24 years old, I was with a mentor in my life, and we were talking nothing related to missions. And just somewhere in the conversation, he just said, I think you should join YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And I was like, what's that? And he described to me this mission organization and a lot of the things that they do. And I said, well, that's pretty cool. And then the conversation went on back to whatever we were talking about. And this nothing connected with me. But about a year later, the same person, we were talking again. And again, out of nowhere in the conversation, he just shifted the conversation instantly. He goes, Shawn, I really think you should join YWAM. And in that moment, what I would call like a supernatural peace, something that was very, very real to me in that moment, just came over me. And then I just knew that I knew that I was supposed to join and be a part of this mission organization called YWAM. And I then said, again, Ken, tell me what is YWAM again? Because I'd kind of forgotten, and because we hadn't talked about it at all from that year before. And he told me again, and I was like, wow, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And about 3 months later, I would actually leave to go do my YWAM Discipleship Training School. They call it a DTS in Kona, Hawaii. Now, that's a great place to go do mission training in Kona, Hawaii.
No kidding, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel called.
You were suffering.
I feel called to train at least.
Yeah, that's right. I know. There you go. And so I while I was preparing for that transition, that 3 months before, to go actually do the training, the Lord had deposited this phrase in my heart, to know him and to make him known. Now, no one ever told me that phrase. I had not heard that phrase from anybody. It was what I would call a Shawn Maragni original. It was going to be my motto for life.
Right.
And so I was signing all of my newsletters to my family and friends as I was telling them I was going to be going to do this mission training in Kona, Hawaii, with this organization called YWAM. And at the end of that letter, I would sign Shawn Maragni, to know him and to make him known.
Nice.
And so what was really kind of unique was on the day that I arrived in Kona, Hawaii for my DTS, I was walking around the campus, and I went to the place where the common area where they have their campus worship and other special gatherings. And over the stage was this big banner that said to know him and to make him known. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, Lord, this is so you. And you really are the one that led me to be here. I mean, that was like a big, confirmation, on this big, banner over the stage. So knowing that I had never heard that phrase before until the Lord spoke it to me personally, and then seeing it a second time on the stage. So it was a really cool moment.
To interrupt you for a second, was there any part of you that initially reacted, someone's read my letters?
Yes.
I'm the one that came up with that.
Exactly. Jokingly, I actually said something along the lines of, they stole my motto.
Talk about a God moment.
What's interesting is I was trying to remember where I first heard that, because I heard it years and years ago. I knew there was some national organization that was their motto, and I just looked it up. The Navigators in 1933, their mission statement, to know Christ, to make him known, and help others do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little
Wow,
bit longer,
that's
but it's
awesome.
basically the gist of it. So that's a great story.
That's beautiful.
So on you go with telling, then from there landing at the Philippines, et cetera.
So from there, I was in the DTS and doing my training, and they announced that the outreach would be in the Philippines. Funny enough, I was wanting to go to China or India, so I was hoping that that's where our outreach would take us.
Mm-hmm.
And when they told us that we're going to the Philippines, I was like, no. I mean, I didn't say it out loud, but I was
Right.
so upset about it. I was like, I don't want to go to the Philippines. And then my next thought was, where is the Philippines? Because I had no clue where it was at on the map. So the Lord opened up that door through our DTS and went to the DTS, and it was there that I actually met Anna, who would later on, of course, become my wife, and we've been married near 23 years. And so was it a call to missions or was it a call to marriage? Or was it both?
Yes.
God has a way of getting us where He wants us, and He uses all kinds of different things in life to bring us to where He wants us. And so Anna and I, of course, at a later time, we did, of course, get married. But I met her; she was my interpreter when I was going around door to door and sharing the gospel, and she would interpret for me. And so that was the door that opened. But it was also during that time that the Lord really began to mark my heart in a special way for the Filipino people and for the nation of the Philippines. And of course, if that weren't so, I wouldn't be there 22 years later, still serving and still pursuing what God wants us to do in that nation.
Yeah.
Show me more. Show me more.
So that brings us really up to date in terms of your mission. Tell us a little bit about that. What are you doing there? What have you established there? Because I know you've got a niche, so to speak, with what you're doing.
It has been a unique journey. We first started our ministry reaching out to street children, and had an orphanage, and it was just an amazing time and season and in serving the street kids of the region. And then that door closed in a very unfortunate way. And it closed, I won't even go into the details, but it just had a very unfortunate occurrence in our ministry. Nothing to do with me or my wife. It had to do with someone else that made a big mess in our ministry, and we were no longer able to continue to serve there in that area. And so then the Lord opened up a door for us, and we went to the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, kind of as just trying to regroup ourselves. Like, God, we don't know what to do. We feel like, everything that we have labored for has just come to nothing. And so we were just going, God, what next? What are you saying? And it was while we were there just seeking the Lord in the International House of Prayer that the Lord began to confirm in a very unique way that He was calling us to Cebu City, Philippines. And He was also calling us to start a 24/7 house of prayer. And when I say a unique way, what I mean by that is that my wife and I both had a series of dreams in 1 week period of time. I had 3 dreams, and she had 3 dreams, and they were all about Cebu City. And they were all about a specific couple that we would later actually come underneath their leadership and work with in the area of ministry of prayer. And so that was basically the way that we ended up in the Philippines, was this 6 dreams in 1 week. And my wife and I, some of those dreams, they were like almost nearly the same dream that we each one of us were having on the same night. So it's a very unique way that God got our attention. And so with a number of other clear confirmations that followed, we ended up going to Cebu City, Philippines to start a 24/7 house of prayer. And now we've been in Cebu City for near 16 years, not quite 16 years, but near 16 years, serving, building the 24/7 place of worship and prayer. But we also have been developing a training center. So we run different kinds of trainings, both long-term and short-term trainings. We work to be a blessing to the church and serve the church in this area, of any area we can contribute in our area of grace that God's given to us to be a blessing to the body of Christ in this area. And then also more in the recent time, we have now are starting to focus, our ministry starting to focus again on reaching street children. It won't be the main thing that we do, but it's obviously going to be a major thing. But our main thing is always going to be that backbone of our ministry and mission, and it'll be the foundation of what we're building from, and that is that prayer culture, that strong prayer community, a strong word community, people that are loving God in prayer, loving people through prayer, loving God in His Word, and are bringing the Word to the people, and in both spiritual and practical ways. And so, but we've been serving and in the street kids, and now we're also reaching out to homeless families through some of our partners. And then also we are a new ministry starting to be birthed, and that is a ministry for the trafficked victims, because it's such a major thing in the Philippines, and specifically in our region. It is a huge problem in our region with human trafficking, and specifically in the area of online sexual exploitation of children is huge in our area.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing at present.
Yeah.
Big deals. Very big.
Major impact. So, Shawn, thank you for coming and sharing with us your story and how you got to where you are, and then also sharing about your ministry there and your vision. Rick, do you have any other questions? Obviously, we're going to ask how people can follow Shawn and his ministry, but
right. Well, we definitely provide an opportunity for you to promote anything that you'd like to promote. But one of the things, as you were, and I hate to put you on the spot here, Shawn, but I'm curious, as you guys have been doing this, prayer ministry within, the intense prayer ministry with, I think Brett had mentioned, like a 24-hour focus. Do you have any stories from the ministry that you'd be willing to share with us and our audience? Anything that that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I would like to say, just in our years of praying, worshiping, just being there and giving that strong focus into our ministry, we have seen a lot of people come to the Lord. Awesome. That we know is connected with an increase of prayer. I've come to realize and recognize, because we see it in Scripture, when there is an increased commitment from God's people in a city to prayer and worship, what happens is it impacts the spiritual environment in that city or that community. And whereas when there is lack of prayer, what happens is there tends to be a more hardness of heart and a lack of response to the gospel when it's presented. But when there is an increase of prayer and worship going on in that city, what happens is that when the gospel is preached, there tends to be a greater tenderness and responsiveness to the gospel, because there is a spiritual aspect or a dimension going on around that city, trying to keep that city in darkness and trying to keep that city, blinded from the beauty and the wonder and the glory of Jesus. And so when the church commits themselves in this way, it does have a very profound impact in the city. So we have seen a lot of answers to our prayers. We've seen a lot of people come to the Lord over the years. We have seen one time we were in prayer and we were praying for the area of human traffickers, that they would get exposed and they would get caught. And we were having a very specific meeting that night on this particular area. And the next day in the newspaper was these traffickers were all getting caught. And so we were like, well, that's that's very obvious that was connected to, our time of prayer, because the Lord answered it and was moving in a very unusual way and did just what we were asking him to do.
That's awesome.
Which is a total reflection of what his heart's all about, is justice.
Right. I mean, so answered prayers and building faith and changing lives. That is awesome.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Totally.
Well, Shawn, we want to, we'll put in the description under this video, anything you'd like for me to post on how we can follow your ministry. But is there anything online you can point him to, a certain website or URL that you can say right now, in addition to us posting it?
Well, I would say you could follow us with our Cebu House of Prayer Facebook. We do have a CebuHouseOfPrayer.com webpage. It's right now being reconstructed, so it's not fully up to date. A person who wanted to reach out to me could get through to me at Shawn Maragni at my Facebook, specifically my Messenger, which is what I mostly am keeping in a regular update or regularly checking on, and or my email address, Shawn Maragni @gmail.com.
Okay, great. And so we'll post those things. Also, just in case people are wondering, you pronounce it Cebu, right? Is it Cebu?
Or Cebu?
Yeah,
Cebu.
Cebu. We say Cebu. Yeah.
Okay, Cebu. And that is CEBU.
Yep,
Cebu City,
right. Cebu
Philippines.
City.
So
Right.
Cebu City House of Prayer, and they'll find you if they even just Google that, right?
Yeah, they should find us.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Well, Shawn, hey, you're like a brother to me.
Love you, Brett.
We are brothers in Christ.
Right.
And
I was gonna say
That's right.
you are a brother to me,
we
Shawn.
are brothers in Christ. We are
Hey, there you
officially
go.
cousins, but we're brothers in Christ. And I love you, bro, and really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. So,
Well, thanks for having me, and really nice to meet you, Rick, and Chase. Thanks for doing all the work in the background.
Yeah, he's busy over here.
so all right, bro. Take care, and God bless.
Great.
Yeah.
God bless you guys too.
Take care,
Okay.
All right. Hey, I'm really enjoying these interviews. Love my cousin Shawn. I know I'm biased, but I really enjoyed hearing his story and how God's moving his life. And we look forward to future guests and what they'll be sharing as well. So we want to make a plea at this point in time that you would share this, spread the word on social media, share on click like on Facebook. But it'd mean a whole lot to us if you could help us get the word out about Sound of Truth. We believe we've got something here that would really benefit people, and hope it's benefiting you. So
I know it doesn't cost a lot from you guys, and that's why it might not seem like it does a big deal, does a lot. But just clicking like and hitting subscribe and hitting share, although it doesn't seem like you guys are doing a lot, it actually means a lot when it for the internet, the Ethernet and how all this works. So even those little bitty things of hitting those likes, putting little comments, and hitting that share means a lot for us to be able to minister to more people.
And who knows, you sharing it might make a huge difference in someone else's life. So thanks. God bless.